It measures just 9 inches in circumference, weighs only about 5 ounces, and is made of cork wound with woolen yarn, covered with 2 layers of cowhide, and stitched by hand precisely 216 times.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and cracker jack. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
From the Hilltop Park to the Colt Stadium to Griffith Stadium and to finish off at Exposition Park. Welcome to 216 Stitches, a baseball podcast. Rob, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Kevin. What about yourself?
Doing pretty good. The last couple of days, it was the All-Star break. And yes, until the actual game, it doesn't feel like a break. But then 2 days without baseball, damn, it feels so weird.
Yeah, no, there was plenty to do. But yeah, Major League Baseball had their All-Star break, and you and I took a little bit of an All-Star break. So, but yeah, it was well founded. Luckily, you and I follow other things and do other stuff we have to do. But it's always nice when baseball gets back in the swing of things. As we're over the first hump of the season, Kevin, and we're on to the second, and we can see we can't see it in the distance, but there's a little dot of light at the end of the tunnel for the final of the season, and we're coming up closely on that.
So it was the All-Star game this week. Mike Trout, MVP, second year in a row. The first player to ever do that. Let's just start there. Mike Trout, what a performance. What do you think about Mike Trout? Is he one of your favorite players in the league right now?
I'm not a big fan of the Angels in general, just because they were kind of a thorn in the Yankees' side earlier on in the early 2000s. But I mean, do I like Mike Trout? Sure. I mean, he's a great baseball player. He's very, very entertaining to watch. Would I say he's one of my favorite? Probably not. He's wearing the wrong colors for me, but he's but hell, he's easily the best player in the game right now.
It seems like he's one of the most well-rounded player we've seen in a little while, and he's dangerous at the plate. He can do home runs. He can steal bases. He can play his position well. Seems like he's a breath of fresh air, and there's nothing but smiles when you watch him play. He has an attitude that just loves the game and loves to be there, and he respects it so much, and it's kind of refreshing to see that on a player.
The best way to put Mike Trout is he's very much a throwback player. You know what I mean? He plays the game in an old-style way of where he hustles like Ty Cobb and Pete Rose. He has the power of Babe Ruth, not to the extent of Babe Ruth, but I mean, he kind of all has those things kind of all meshed together. And yeah, he is a 5-tool player. And you said it perfectly. He's a well-rounded player because obviously you've got your power hitters, you got your speedsters, you got your average hitters. But when you can take all of that and put it into a blender and hit mix on the blender, boom, out came Mike Trout.
The day before the All-Star game was the Home Run Derby. This year was a new format, players going against each other and players moving on. And Todd Frazier, the hometown Cincinnati boy, won it. And it was a great spectacle and actually did really good in the ratings. People were talking about it. Even the journalists on the press box, who usually are bored to death in that exhibition show-off, well, they were involved in the actual game and they were interested, focused, and entertained by that format. What did you think about the Home Run Derby?
I like the format, Kevin, and I was kind of in the same boat as those guys were. Yeah, the home run derby is a cool thing to see, but I mean, mind you, not that we don't have the McGuires and the Bonds and the Griffeys. Maybe it's because I'm a little bit older too, but it does get quite boring quickly. And even though you're watching home runs, it can get boring because it gets repetitive, right?
Yeah.
And I think the fact that they did a new format, they really revamped the thing. It was pretty cool because it's all of a sudden it goes from like a single elimination like tournament almost, and it just kind of pits the best of the best where it's not just like 8 guys going up, but 2 guys going head to head to really, really battle. So I thought it was really good. Hopefully they continue to do it in the years to come because it worked out perfectly.
No, absolutely. I thought it was a great spectacle, and it brought something different. And when you change it up every couple years, it revitalizes it, and it brings a different audience, and maybe brings back an audience that got bored of it back to the show. And it was another great spectacle. And I think the fact that an hometown boy went further and actually won the thing created an atmosphere, an ambiance that would not have been there maybe if a unknown, because that's the thing with home run derby. If it's an unknown that goes in the end and wins it, it's like, yeah, it's anticlimactic. If it's the hometown guy who everybody cheers and just goes crazy in the stands and in the end of the what's the word, general seating in the bleachers, well, it creates a different atmospheres, and it actually makes it's relatable, it's translatable to TV. You feel it at home when there's an actual party in the crowd, and I thought that brought a big part of that party that was the home run derby this year.
And oddly enough, Kevin, in a way, it also kind of combats risk of injury, because I remember a few years ago when Bobby Abreu had that insane home run derby where he hit something like 30 home runs. All of a sudden, you're not just out there trying to hit as many home runs as you possibly can and then, have a chance of injuring yourself or tying yourself out. You're just trying to beat the other guy and get to the next round. So you're not facing 8 other guys in the first round and then moving on like that when they're carrying over home run total stuff and such. You're just trying to beat one guy, and I think it's a lot more safer for the players in general.
No, absolutely, and I think it makes it. Maybe it's we're in the honeymoon period, the new format as well. Maybe next year it won't age well. We'll see. If that's something that will be to watch for, and if they tweak it even more next year to see if there's something to do for it, because this year as well, not only did the home run count, the distance counted as well. The further it went, the more point it gave you, and if there was a tie, there was a 3 swing. If you do a home run, you go through. So there was a lot of things. It was complicated to watch the beginning, but once you get the hang of it, it was very entertaining. But the whole All-Star break, in a way, would you consider it a big success in Cincinnati?
Well, the ratings were one of the lowest rated All-Star games ever. Mind you, fantastic, but it wasn't horrible. I've seen a lot worse All-Star games. There's been some blowouts and whatnot. So I don't know, Kevin. The Major League Baseball All-Star game, and we kind of touched upon it in our preview of it. I think there needs to be a little bit more going on. And I know they have the World Series advantage thing, and you and I kind of both discussed our opinions on that. But I'll ask you this, and and if anyone out there listening also wants to touch upon it too, please, we'll give out the email address at the end of the show. But I'm thinking maybe the All-Star weekend, not just the home run derby, needs to kind of go in the way of the hockey the NHL All-Star game, and have a little bit more of a skill set competition. Why don't we have something for pitchers? Why don't we have something for fielding?
Okay,
I don't know what you could do.
What would it be? Okay, we have the home run derby for the hitters. Mm-hmm. Would you do a precise hitting, like if you see you have targets on the field and you have to hit a specific target at a specific time as a hitter, so you have to be precise as a hitter,
like they do with the plates in the NHL skills competition. And you could also have
well, here's an idea. Here it is. You have lights scattered at every position on the field.
Yep.
One lights up, that's where you have to hit the ball, but the pitcher doesn't know, so it's really the batter who has to control the ball and direct it there. That could be an option.
And you could also do they have the hardest shot. Why not the fastest pitch? Who like obviously earliest Chapman would probably take that honor. But yeah, why not have the fastest pitch? Something for the pitchers. Again, baseball's a much different sport, because it's something like that. If you do something like that, someone can get injured throwing out their arm, right? And you're really going to throw your arm for a skills competition. There's got to be a way they can kind of figure out something for to get everyone involved, because
you throw a curveball, the curveball that curves the most.
Yeah, not even that, And I liked your precision hitting idea, because Kevin, there's a lot of these players that go to the All-Star game and don't get a chance to play because they're being used as bench players, fringe players. I know this would give them a chance to be involved.
Obviously, you would have as well the run the bases. The fastest run the bases, but that could be dangerous for injuries. But there's a way to do it without actual bases, so you don't have to hit the base, which is one of the reasons why it's dangerous to roll your ankle.
Yeah.
If you just turn around the base with the diamond without the actual bases, there's less danger for injuries, and you can do the fastest base runner that way.
And not only that, like look in the skills competition, people can get hurt doing the fastest skater. You could blow a tire and go into the boards, and let's face it, you can get hurt walking down the stairs and trip and fall. So you have to take. Again, don't put anyone in jeopardy of their season getting fucked up because they're in some sort of show. But I mean, just give them. There's got to be a way where you can kind of give them a chance, a spectacle to show themselves off.
For a pitcher, we can do precise pitching. The same way you have a fake strike zone with lights on it. When a light lights up, you got to hit that target as a pitcher, and that could be you don't have to pitch 100 miles an hour. You could do 70 and do curveballs and do sinkers and whatever, and try to hit it that way. And it could be very entertaining because you can have all the camera angles with a high-speed camera that can slow it down and see the actual ball rotation on knuckleballs, on curves, and stuff like that. That could be very, very fun to watch on TV.
Well, they gotta, and I think this is all great ideas. I think they just kind of got to take a look at the game as a whole. And I still think they should stick with the World Series home field advantage. But I think they need to make it more of a and you and I both said on the record that the Major League Baseball All-Star Game is the best All-Star Game out of any of them. Because I think it has the most. Not only does it have the most on the line, but I think it's also the game where you don't have to change anything when you play it. Like in the NHL All-Star Game, there's no hitting. In the NFL, in the Pro Bowl, no one's blocking. Yeah. And in the NBA All-Star Games, no one's fouling. So you already have that, and that on its own should be more than enough. But I mean, unfortunately, they have to do something to kind of get the ratings up because it was really, really low rated.
For the All-Star Game itself, what I would do is put 100% of the controls in the manager. You decide your team. You don't have any restriction. You don't want to take any player from that team? Well, tough luck. They should have better player. That's how you should look at it. And that way, the manager would not be afraid to manage his team the way he sees fit and not trying to juggle everybody to get them playing time.
Yeah, and that's kind of what happened in the 2003 All-Star Game.
This year a little bit when you looking at the managers doing weird substitution late in game just to put a body out there that hasn't played yet. Yeah,
I mean, and look what happened in 2003. It cost them. We had a tie game, and then that's when they put in the rule the next year. I guess it all depends who's managing the team and what's basically on the line. But you figure guys like Ned Yost and Bruce Bochy, they're very much have interests in who's going to get home field advantage in the Major League Baseball All-Star Game because both of those guys could be back there, right? So, I mean, like I said, Kevin, I think they don't need to do anything to the game itself, but I just think to the whole weekend to kind of make it a little bit more appealing to a younger crowd.
No, absolutely. All right. We're 2 weeks away, a little less, about 13 days away from the trade deadline for the players to be available for the playoffs, for the postseason in Major League Baseball. Mm-hmm. Big rumor going on the last couple of weeks. Cole Hamels, Jonathan Papelbon, two players out of Philadelphia that are likely to be traded together or not, who knows. And the team that's been rumored to be on the lookout for them or maybe somebody else is the Blue Jays. And even the Yankees in some sort. Anybody would be Cole Hamels would love to have them in the rotation. But what do you think? Are those two players going to be traded since here until the deadline? And will they be a Blue Jay?
I don't think so. The Blue Jays have shown in the past they don't pull off this big trigger, and it's like they're afraid of something. Now, they do have a lot of farm hands that are really coming along. So I don't think they want to mess anything there up. And, to be fair, I don't really blame them because, they have a plan. They want to stick to it. But, I mean, you and I have talked about for the Blue Jays, this is a year that they should really kind of put all their chips in the middle of the table and go for it. So Papelbon, I don't know. Kevin, I'll be totally honest with you. I'd be surprised if either of these guys are traded. The Phillies have gone on record saying that they don't want to trade Cole Hamels until the offseason. Just maybe, I don't know, they want to get his value up a little bit more, but I don't think I don't know. I just don't see it. Now the Dodgers are also in the Cole Hamels trade talk. I think that for Hamels to get traded at the deadline and the non waiver trade deadline, I think it's going to have to be a really enticing offer and a really good package of players for them to come over and want to make the deal.
Yeah, we'll see, but it's interesting because those are the two big names that are being talked about. There are Cato as well that could be a great other choice for the Blue Jays. It might even fit more what they probably need to get better. A starting pitcher can get you a lot more advantage until the end of the season than an actual closer, because a starting pitcher will get you a lot more inning, a lot more start, and maybe more games, more wins.
And I've heard Johnny Cueto has also kind of been linked to the Yankees and the Dodgers again. So I think, the Yankees are, as of recording this today, they're 4.5 games up on.
There's
on
7
second.
games on Boston, though.
Yeah, and that's the American League East, and you and I have talked about it. It's a crapshoot. All of a sudden you're out of it, but then now all of a sudden you're in it. So anything can happen. I don't foresee the Red Sox doing too much. I don't think they have the.
They're playing badly right now against the Angels as we speak, as we record this. But not just that, they've been on a slump, and they're 7 games out right now, and that it's not looking on an upward trend. And I think they're going to be one of the first ones to become sellers and not buyers this year in that East Division of the American League.
The All-Star game can be a curse for some teams, because the Red Sox were really, really hot before the All-Star break, and then all of a sudden you go in an All-Star break, everyone kind of goes into you don't want to say vacation mode, but they kind of cool off, right? You kind of lose the lackluster of the luster of playing good, and just overall just
rhythm. You lose your rhythm too, because it's an everyday type of thing, and if you miss 2 days, it's a lot.
All of a sudden, it's like coming back to work from a vacation. It always takes a day or two to kind of get back into the groove at work, because you're kind of still in vacation mode. You just need to kickstart yourself again. So mind you, they might go back up, but I'm going to agree with you on this one, Kevin. I don't think the Red Sox will be buyers. I think they will be sellers. I think most teams in the American League East, I think the Yankees are going to be buyers. The Jays will probably be buyers. I don't know about Tampa and Baltimore. I just think the Yankees and the Jays will be the two major buyers in the American League East.
All right. Speaking of trade deadline moves and trades, let's talk about the worst trades in baseball history. Mm-hmm. If we go to Bleacher Report, there's an article. It's called MLB Power Rankings: the 10 worst trades in baseball history. We're not going to go to the 10, but we'll mention top 5, because there's a lot of great trades. Great if you're on the other side, but bad if you're on the other side. And it's great to talk about. And because just before the deadline, it reminds general managers out there that be careful. Sometimes the best trade is the one that you don't make.
Yeah, and honestly, Kevin, and when it comes to trades, and this is in any sport, it's so much easier to look back on hindsight.
Of course.
You know what I mean? And it's like drafts, it's so much easier to sit here and say, oh, what a stupid fucking trade these guys made. But how easy is it to just look back in hindsight? Because at the time, you don't know what you're getting.
Exactly. Let's start with the 5th worst trade in baseball history, according to Bleacher Report. The Red Sox let Bagwell go for Larry Anderson, Rob.
Yeah, Jeff Bagwell obviously went on to a storied career. The Red Sox were kind of into it was in the early '90s, and they were kind of where the Blue Jays were now. They were in they wanted to win now, and they were willing to sell off their farm for it. Larry Anderson, I think he was a decent player. I don't know too much about it. I think he was
a middle reliever.
Yeah, middle reliever.
He provided mild success to the Red Sox, but the team once again failed in their quest to win a World Series, and he was never heard after that. A couple of years after he did his 1990 Red Sox debut.
And Jeff Bagwell went on to hit
the Rookie of the Year after, a 22-year-old.
449 home runs, 1,529 RBIs. So yeah, I think
first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I think the Astros won that trade. But I mean, then again, at the time, you're looking for every team needs bullpen help. So not every player is going to turn into Jeff Bagwell, but make sure your scouts are knowing what they're doing down there. Trade a guy who almost hit 500 home runs for a middle reliever who did nothing for your team. Mild success, sorry. He had mild success, Kevin.
Yeah, mild, very mild.
Yes.
Detroit Tigers trade John Smoltz to the Braves for Doyle Alexander in 1987.
Well, at the time, it looks like the Tigers did get a little something out of Alexander, who went 9-0 with a 1.53 RA to boost the Tigers to a 1987 American League East Division title, but not faring too well in the American League Championship Series that year. He went 0-2 with a 10 ERA to bring in Doyle Alexander had an 0-5 career record in the postseason altogether. And John Smoltz, do we really need to go into detail of what he did in his career?
Another first ballot Hall of Famer. And Doyle Alexander, he was never the same after that. He actually retired in 1989.
Yep. And again, John Smoltz would go on to win, I think, over 200 games. He would save a bunch of games, obviously. I don't have his stats in front of me, mind you. But we all know what John Smoltz did. You don't need Kevin and I to tell you how great of a player he was. So,
absolutely. Number 3, the Rangers trade Sammy Sosa to the White Sox for Harold Baines. But granted, Sammy Sosa didn't do squat with the White Sox. It was the other Chicago club that actually eventually got the success of that trade.
yeah, and we all know the story here. What happened with Sammy Sosa? He goes to he eventually goes to the Cubs. He
juiced up and hits a lot of home runs. Oh wait, was that supposed to say that?
No, we're off the record. We don't know 100%, but yeah.
True, allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. He had that amazing run in 1998 with McGuire and all those home runs. So, I mean, again, Harold Baines, and Harold Baines, he was a good player. It's not like he was one of these Larry Anderson type players, you know what I mean? Where you're like, oh, who the hell is this guy? What did he do? Harold Baines is a name, and he was one of the better DHs in recent memory. But I mean, obviously, if you look back again, if you're the Texas Rangers, you might want to hold on to Sammy Sosa. But again, I'll say it again, Kevin, hindsight is 2020. And well, again, we're not going to go and talk about how great Sammy Sosa was because he is great. So,
but you know what? To amend themselves, they did bring a 38-year-old Sammy Sosa back, and he did hit his 600th home run as a Texas Ranger.
And we didn't. And Sammy Sosa kind of wound down his career from there. So, it looks like the Rangers were a little too late into atone for their mistake. Mind you, that Sammy Sosa after his run in Chicago wasn't the Sammy Sosa of the Chicago Cubs. And it's just too bad that I would have been interested to see what the Texas Rangers could have done with Sammy Sosa. Maybe they would have got that first World Series victory under their belt. But again, Harold Baines, I think he only played 1 year in Texas, and then he kind of went off and did his thing. But yeah, again, I don't know, Kevin. I'm not making that trade if I'm the if I'm the Texas Rangers. If I have to do it again,
another trade that I would never make. That still hurts. Because what if maybe it would have saved the franchise? Who knows? Randy Johnson to the Mariners for Mark Lanston and Mike Campbell. Rob.
Yeah, this is a tough one for you to swallow. Mark Langston was a good pitcher. Mark Langston, I remember him mostly from his days in California when he played for the California Angels. I'm going to just kind of bring up Mark Langston's stats for the Expos, and we'll kind of see how he did after the trade there. Now,
he never pitched a game. That's Campbell. Campbell never pitched a single game for Montreal.
Langston went 12-9 in 1989.
He pitched 24 games for the Expos, that's it.
Yeah, and then he went off, and then, Mark Lanston had a decent career. He had an overall record of 179 and 158. Randy Johnson, however...
it's a big unit.
Yeah.
A bird killer.
300 wins. Probably the last pitcher who's probably going to win 300 games, because that's such a difficult milestone to get to nowadays.
No, because pitcher won't ever have that longevity ever again. They pitch too hard now. It's not like back in the day. He pitched for more than 20 years in the league, in the big leagues. Randy Johnson, which is mind-boggling.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you said, because they don't have longevity. And if you go back to the days when Cy Young pitched, I mean, these guys were pitching every other day, right? Like, that's the way it went.
Like every 3 days or so.
Honestly, Kevin, we could probably do an entire show on players that the Expos have traded away.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot.
I was just going to say, we're not going to do that out of respect to you, because we don't want you to jump off a cliff or nothing. But, this was obviously Randy Johnson would go on to win 303 games in his career. Stellar career, 4,875 strikeouts. Yeah, you want to look back, it's probably, I would say it's the worst trade in Expos history, no?
Probably, yes, I'll give it to you. It is the worst trade in baseball, and not baseball, but in the Expos history.
Yep. So before Kevin starts crying, let's move on to.
I'll actually let you say what the worst trade is, and people will understand why.
Yeah, the worst trade ever is, and I would have to agree, is the Boston Red Sox trading Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees for cash. The owner of the Boston Red Sox, Harry Freese, Harry Freese wanted to. His first love was the Broadway, and he really wanted to finance a Broadway show. So what he would do, he would sell off all his Red Sox players who won the championship in 1918. He would sell them off to help finance, his plays. So he sold off Babe Ruth to the Yankees, and he financed a play called No No Nanette. And the rest is kind of history. In 1920, Babe Ruth's first year as a Yankee, he hit 54 home runs and instantly became, the face of that franchise for years and years and years to come. The Broadway play didn't debut until 1925, and the Red Sox would win another championship for 85 years. Babe Ruth is obviously considered one of the best top power hitters of all time, hitting 714 home runs, a record that stood for 40 years until a man named Roger Maris came along. Not Roger Maris, until Hank Aaron came along and broke it. Roger Maris obviously broke Babe's single-season home run record. And yeah, Kevin, the curse of the Bambino, and we've seen it all play out. The Red Sox just kind of couldn't win that big game, and they atoned for it finally in 2004. But yeah, I would say that's the worst trade in MLB history because you got cash to put on and you didn't even invest in your baseball team. You put it into a play. So. Yep, it's the worst trade of all time, Kevin. I would be hard-pressed to find another one.
Yeah, it has to be one of the worst of all time. For sure. When you're talking about it took a big puppy to finally break the curse of the Bambino 80-some years later. It's almost mind-boggling. The only curse left, I would say, in the baseball right now is the Billy Goat's curse in Chicago. So that's going to be interesting to see if that ever goes away, because the Cubs have a decent team this year, so let's keep an eye out for that, and we'll probably go deeper in another show on the Billy Goat's curse.
Yeah, and we can probably do a show on the curse of the Bambino. I think we should, in an upcoming show, we'll kind of document the curse of the Bambino, but I think we should definitely do the Billy Goat curse because that's still active, so I'm pretty sure we can find some fun stuff to talk about there.
Absolutely. Let's take a break and come back and talk about Ballparks. Thanks for listening to 216 Stitches, a baseball podcast. Subscribe to OTW Studios on iTunes to get all the show from Off the Woodwork Studios Sports Podcasting Network. Shows just like 216 Stitches, a baseball podcast. Two Solitudes, Soccer Podcast, USL Radio, Off the Woodworks. All those shows are available for you on OTW Studios on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, anywhere you get your podcast. Now back to the show with Rob and Kevin. And we're back on 216 Stitches. Just 1 second. If you want to reach us, you can do it by email. 216stitchespod@gmail.com or on Twitter @216stitchespod. And that's the numbers. So @216stitchespod on Twitter. All right, Rob. I wanted to talk about Ballparks because there's two books that I just bought that I'm going to read and do the review next couple of weeks. So one of them has something to do with Ballparks. It's the 101 baseball places you need to see before you strike out, before you strike dead. So I'm starting to read this book. And the other one is Greatest Stories About the Old Ball Game. So those will have a review eventually on the show here on the 216 Stitches, but I wanted to talk about Ballparks because I know in the last couple of weeks, month, year, you've been traveling to the States a lot and have attended different games at different ballparks, and I have as well seen maybe about 5 or 6 different ballparks in North America, so we can see the difference and pinpoint what makes a ballpark different than it's just a stadium or just a normal arena. What makes that ballpark something that's almost a shrine? It's almost a religious experience without the spiritual. Well, it's actually a spiritual experience to watch baseball. Maybe not religious, but it's almost spiritual. So, what is the park you've seen recently, Rob?
Well, the baseball park I've been to most recently, I wasn't actually out there for a baseball game, but it was still a baseball park to begin with, so I had a chance to kind of check out the sites. Was Miller Park in Milwaukee, and it's very similar to the Skydome in Toronto, where it has a retractable roof, but it has windows that you can see out of. You can see out of the city. It's a beautiful, beautiful stadium. The problem with the Rogers Center, Kevin, and we've obviously both been there.
Yeah, many
It's
times.
it's a concrete tomb.
It's a concrete. There's no soul. There's a lack of soul in that
Nope.
stadium.
Because it's a concrete tomb. There's nothing to escape. There's no open area. And then when the dome's open, it feels really good. You get the bright lights, that, and the other, the nice sunny day.
And the backdrop of the city, the skyline that looks beautiful from the inside of the park. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean and when I was at PNC Park in Pittsburgh, you could see this entire skyline of Pittsburgh, and it looks beautiful. You know what I mean? And from Toronto, all you can see, obviously, you can see the CN Tower, but that's basically all you can see. Again, it would be great if they had windows out to showcase the city of Toronto. So yeah, Miller Park was really, really good. I want to get down there for a baseball game because I obviously want to see how that plays out. But I guess the stadium I was at the most recently for the baseball game would have been PNC Park. I seen the Phillies play the Pirates. It was a lot of fun. Garrett Cole pitched for the Pirates, their number one pitcher, and yeah, it was just it felt like an old timey ballpark. And obviously, I'm 34 years old, so I didn't see a lot of the old timey ballparks.
Like you never went to Ebbets Field in the Polo Grounds.
No, I never got a chance to make it there. But from what, and I was talking to this older guy who was there, and he really says that a lot of these ballparks like PNC, Camden Yards, they are built exactly. Obviously, you have the amenities of the technological era that we live in now, but we have, but they also have the romance of the old ballparks. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And I think it's something that we've seen since Camden Yards in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
That since then, it brought that trend back to Major League Baseball. If we're looking at different type of parks like Citi Field, Target Fields, just I think Citi Field actually changed names since then, but the Mets' new ballpark. Those newest ballpark last couple of years have a different vibe to it because, yes, like you say, they're modern, but with that old-time ballpark feeling almost intended in the design, and that's something very different from like the Olympic Stadium or the Astrodome or that generation, like the Skydome is, that early 80s generation of ballparks or stadium that was to showcase different type of architecture, concrete, very different materials were used that looked really great back then, but had no sentimental or no soul to it, and that at the end of the day, it's what it's all about. And when you go to a Skydome or Rogers Center, it's a very cold atmosphere because of the material used. Concrete is a very cold and doesn't represent or doesn't generate any emotion at all, which is wood, brick, vines. That brings different type of emotion. And when you go to PNC Park or Camden Yards, Target Field, Citi Fields, you see those materials being used, and it actually has an effect on the whole vibe of the stadium.
Yeah, and at the time, Kevin, when they built the Rogers Center, that was that's the way stadiums are going, and that was state of the art.
It was the best stadium in the world.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, and it showed in the attendance. But unfortunately for the Blue Jays, they kind of, there's just something ugly about AstroTurf, and I know they don't use AstroTurf anymore, but it's just there's just something ugly, and you just again you have to compare it to a concrete tomb. I've been to Turner Park in Atlanta, and this was a few years back, and I remember when I was watching the game, it started to rain, and even though the game never got delayed or canceled or anything like that, but there was something cool about the fact that I had never been to a game where it started to rain, because if it did that in Toronto, the roof would have been closed, and
the roof would just close, and 10 minutes later they would start playing.
Yeah, but yeah, I just remember the rain falling on me. I'm like, this is really, really cool. Because there's nothing stopping it. This is baseball, and as stupid as it may sound, I thought it was awesome that I was getting rained on at a baseball game because it was the first time it had ever happened. Because there's also that that allure of, oh man, what's going to happen if they're going to pull up the tar. So yeah, again, it's just little things like that, Kevin. And when I've been to the new Yankee Stadium as well. Unfortunately, I never do get a chance to get to the old one, which is one of my life's biggest regrets. And
There's
yeah,
nothing you can about it. Nothing you can do about it now.
no, of course not. You know what I mean? It is what it is. But that's why I'm not waiting to do stuff like that anymore. I'm not. It was kind of like the whole story of on the Simpsons when Homer said he was going to go to meet Mr. T at the mall. And he's just like, I'll go a little later. I'll go a little later. And then when Homer finally went, Mr. T was gone. So the old Yankee Stadium is my Mr. T at the mall. I never got a chance to go, and I won't make that mistake again. But
Or in Kevin McAllister words, you had rollerblades. It looked so good and so nice. You never want to put them on to use them. At the end of the day, you outgrew them, and you could never wear them.
yeah, exactly. That's it's funny, but I won't. Yeah, like I said, I'm not going to make that mistake again. But yeah, at the new Yankee Stadium. No, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, at the new Yankee Stadium, though, on the field or in the bleachers, it has a very similar look to it. They kept basically the entire blueprints and architecture. Is outside of that the feeling is very different because of the luxury boxes and that aspect to it.
Yeah, on the field itself, it's the old Yankee Stadium.
It looks the same.
Yeah, I mean, they have the Monument Park, which is cool to check out. But I mean, all of a sudden, you're adding, luxury boxes, a steakhouse, stuff that, and I get in this day and age, Kevin, for your team to attract money, which I don't know what the Yankees were worried about there, is that you put things, you know what I mean? You need those things at your ballpark.
No, absolutely. The Yankees could play in the barren field somewhere empty, and it would attract thousands of people.
Yeah, and you got the certain types of Yankee fans. You got the guys in the bleachers who are going to be there every game, chanting all the players' name, and then you got the fancy hoity-toity guys sitting behind home plate that show up in the third inning, watch 2 innings from there, and then go up to the steakhouse and spend all their money up there. So.
No, absolutely. I've been to a couple ballparks. Obviously, the Olympic Stadium in Montreal, which I spent my entire childhood. But if we go outside of that, I did go to the Skydome many times. Fenway Park was one of the places that I probably said the story on this show many times, where I actually walked through the Manny Ramirez door in the Green Monster and touched the warning track and just looked around. It was dark. There was no lights, no floodlights. I couldn't see the entire stadium, but I can feel the atmosphere, feel the vibe, feel the 100 years of existence of this, almost 100 years of existence of this place, and it actually has a soul to it, and it was great to see. I saw the Buffalo Bison Stadium. I've been to Buffalo, I've been to a couple of games there, and yes, it's a minor league stadium, but the stadium is still pretty big for a minor league, and it has a major league feeling to that stadium, but it's Buffalo, and it's gray, and it's brown, and it's next to the highway, so there's nothing special, but I have to say, chicken wings that I ate there, one of the best I've ate in the ballpark ever.
Oh yeah, well, the Buffalo chicken ones, absolutely. Yeah, I drove by the one in Buffalo, and I've never been, so I would definitely like to check it out. Kevin, you brought up Fenway Park, and I kind of brought up, not getting a chance to get to the old Yankee Stadium. There's 3 ballparks left that aren't, of the newer type, and that's Fenway, Wrigley, and Dodger Stadium. So those are the 3 I need to get to.
Even Dodger Stadium is old, but
it's old new. You know what I
yes.
mean? We're not talking 100 years old like Wrigley and Fenway, but I mean Dodger Stadium's old enough.
Chavez Ravine, yeah.
Yeah, where it's you got the it's kind of out in the hills of California. It's not downtown in LA. It's got a lot of history to it. Obviously, Dodgers, the LA Dodgers, and the fans there. As far as they're a hardcore bunch. So yeah, those are the 3 stadiums I want to get to, without a doubt. So
Wrigley Field, that's a stadium that everybody has to go to. One of the original stadiums that it's like you were talking about, like Fenway. But with Wrigley, it's almost been the same since a long, long time. And the iconic fence with the vine and the brick and all that makes it a very special place. And get to it before they decide to renovate it and destroy the vibe or feeling or atmosphere that it does have. And one thing you need to see is that iconic old scoreboard in Wrigley Field.
Yeah, and there's something cool about that too, where it's not a digital scoreboard; it's a guy just who hangs it up. And we should definitely do a 216 podcast road trip, maybe out to Chicago. I mean, I know you and I live in different cities, so
Yeah, but that's not too far. Chicago is actually, I would meet you at your place and we'd go from there.
yeah. I mean, I drove through Chicago just this week on my way to Milwaukee, and I could see U.S. Cellular Field from the highway. Chicago, Wrigley Field, you have to actually kind of venture into the city a little bit, but yeah,
There's some dangerous parts of Chicago, though, so we might need to not just go just the two of us.
I think, Kevin, honestly, if you stick to I've heard the Wrigley Field is in the safer part of Chicago.
Okay, so it's not in Chirac or something like that.
No. Before we wrap up, Kevin, you and I got a nice email from a fan this week.
Absolutely. Let me just go bring it up right now.
Yeah.
Our first email as a podcast.
Yeah, it was very, very nice. It was good to hear from somebody. He really appreciated the way we did it, and right. We definitely anybody who sends us an email, we're gonna read on the show. So
exactly. So we're not gonna say your last name because we don't want to give it away. But Brendan, thanks for the email, and it goes, "Hey guys, love the podcast. Been binge listening at work to get caught up.
I know what binge listening is all about.
Oh, yeah, it's story of our life. Been watching Netflix, whatever.
Yep.
As a Canadian, it's great to hear fellow Canucks talk about baseball. It's not be solely about the Blue Jays. I'm a huge Pirates fan, and it's well, he's gonna like this show. We talked about PNC Park.
Yep.
He's a Pirates fan, and it's refreshing to not have the Jays shoved down my throat. In episode number 4, you were talking about how to fix the All-Star game as far as voting is concerned, and I have an idea. Instead of having the fans vote for anyone they want, the commissioner's office should pick the rosters for each league, and if they insist on giving the fans a say, that they can vote at this point. So for example, Rob Manfred selects, say, Posey, Molina, and Cervelli as the NL All-Star catchers. Let the fan vote the starter from those 3 only. I do disagree with you about whether the game should decide home field advantage. It's a great event that doesn't need this gimmick. I'd love to hear feedback on what you guys think of this. Keep it up. Sincerely, Brendan. Thank you very much, Brendan, for this show.
Oh, yeah. Awesome, Brandon. We appreciate you listening. And, kind of, when I read that email, I'm like, oh, you know what, he might be onto something. I think that's a kind of a cool idea because when you pick the All-Star game, when you pick the All-Star team, when you pick, say, like, okay, well, he brought up catchers. So when you get to select from every catcher in the National League who's played under a certain amount of games. So that's when the hometown guys can get in. So what Brendan's saying is here, you have the commissioner's office pick maybe the 3 best catchers the 3 best catchers who are having the best season, obviously, so far. And then the fans pick from those 3 instead of a wider range of players. I think if you do something
like example, you have a fan from New York whose catcher is not there, but he likes Buster Posey. He thinks he's good, so he's going to vote for Buster Posey, not because he's a fanboy, because he thinks he's worthy.
He's going to be a little bit more unbiased, and you're not going to just get the hometown vote because they play there, right? And yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting idea, and I tend to agree that it would probably be kind of a cool thing to see, and I would think you might get a little bit more maybe, and I don't know if you would get more fan interaction in that way, because I think you really have to kind of investigate. But I think you'd also introduce other players to fans who might not have seen them. You know what I mean? You might be able to, a guy that you don't watch too much, you kind of might start checking him out a little bit more because like, oh, I'm going to check out this guy because I voted for him in the All-Star game. So it's a cool idea. Like I said, Brandon's not a fan of the home field advantage thing, and to each his own. He doesn't think the All-Star game doesn't need it. And yeah, it is a gimmick. It is. I think personally, I do like the fact that there's something on the line. But I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and Brendan is definitely seems like a smart baseball guy. And I couldn't agree with him more about the whole Canadian podcasting with the Blue Jay things. I listened to Baseball Central with Jeff Flair, and they just might as well call it Blue Jay Central because that's all it is.
No, absolutely. So we thank Brandon once again for the email. You want to email us, you want your email to be read on the show, 216stitchespod@gmail.com. Again, on Twitter, at 216stitchespod, or Rob at RobbieMac28, myself at KevLarme. And as always, listen to your baseball, listen to great radio about baseball, and listen to this show. And until next time, play ball.